Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be unpacking one of the most rapid and, honestly, most consequential continental shifts in modern history. We're looking at the Alamo and the Mexican-American War. It's a true domino effect that literally redrew the map of North America. And to make this whole journey a bit more memorable, we're actually exploring this entirely through a totally unique macaroni art style. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it's a really fun visual theme that maps out some incredibly serious history.
So here's our historical menu for today. We'll start with the Texas Revolution begins, then move to the Alamo and independence, check out the annexation and border disputes, cover the actual invasion of Mexico, look at what we're calling the Poison Prize, and wrap up with the 2026 perspective. Let's just get straight to it.
Part 1. The Texas Revolution begins, the seeds of rebellion.
This whole massive continental conflict really started with what looked like a super straightforward agreement, right? But man, it quickly simmered into a full-blown rebellion. So to settle its northern frontier, Mexico invited American settlers into the territory of Tejas. And initially, yeah, it seemed mutually beneficial. But the settlers brought their own laws, their own language, and crucially, they brought slavery. Now, this was a massive point of friction because Mexico had completely abolished slavery. So when General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna eventually scrapped the Mexican Constitution to establish himself as basically a centralized dictator, the situation just hit a boiling point. The settlers started actively defying the government.
Which brings us to Part 2, the Alamo and Independence, Revolt Against Dictator.
Furious over Santa Anna's massive power grab, the Texans, alongside a ton of local Tejanos, decided, you know what, it's time to revolt. By March of 1836, just 189 rebels, and we're talking absolute frontier legends here, guys like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie, found themselves completely barricaded inside this old San Antonio mission known as the Alamo. For 13 agonizing days, this tiny fraction of fighters held out against literally thousands of well-armed Mexican troops moving in on them. I mean, the odds were just completely impossible.
Santa Anna eventually stormed the mission, and he left no combatant survivors. None. But here's the thing. While this was obviously a clear, tactical military victory for Mexico, it became an absolute strategic disaster. The slaughter gave the U.S. public this completely unified, white-hot rallying cry. You've heard it. Remember the Alamo. It just became this massive roar of revenge that burned for the next decade.
Moving on to Part 3, Annexation and Border Disputes, a land in dispute.
So just weeks after the Alamo, the Lone Star Republic actually wins a stunning victory at San Jacinto, officially securing their independence in 1836. But Mexico never recognized this new nation. Fast forward a really tense decade to 1845, and the United States decides to officially annex Texas. The real spark, though, ignited in 1846 when President James K. Polk sent General Zachary Taylor into the Nueces Strip. This was a highly disputed patch of land right between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande. When Mexican troops inevitably defended what they firmly viewed as their own territory, Polk famously claimed that American blood had been shed on American soil, and just like that, the war was on.
Now, what's really interesting here is how completely incompatible these two perspectives were. To the United States, annexing Texas and pushing westward was just, fulfilling manifest destiny, this perceived divine right to expand all the way across the continent. But to Mexico, this was nothing short of the blatant theft of a sovereign province. With these two entirely opposing realities crashing into each other, there was basically zero room left for diplomacy. Total war was kind of the only outcome.
Part 4, the Invasion of Mexico, a two-pronged assault. The U.S. launched a seriously devastating two-pronged assault. Up on the northern front, General Zachary Taylor secured these stunning, completely unexpected victories at places like Palo Alto and Buena Vista. Meanwhile, General Winfield Scott executed an amphibious strike. This was actually the very first major one in U.S. history. He landed his forces right at Veracruz. And what's absolutely fascinating about this is that Scott then fought his way inland toward the capital by following the exact same geographic path that the conquistador Hernán Cortés had taken centuries earlier. It's like history repeating itself.
So you might be wondering, how did Zachary Taylor, nicknamed Old Rough and Ready, actually win those northern battles when he was so heavily outnumbered? Well, the secret was flying artillery. These were highly mobile, horse-drawn cannons that could be rapidly, and I mean rapidly, repositioned right on the battlefield. It completely revolutionized 19th century warfare and gave the American forces a massive, really decisive tactical edge. But we have to remember, the war also had a profound, heavy human cost. During the fall of the castle at the Battle of Chapultepec, the American forces faced the Niños Héroes. These were 6 really young Mexican military cadets who bravely chose to fight to the absolute death rather than surrender to the invading army. Even today, they serve as the ultimate poignant symbol of Mexican national resistance. It really represents the emotional peak of the whole war.
Part 5. The Poison Prize, the Internal Fallout.
The fighting finally concluded with the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and this treaty forced Mexico to cede a staggering 55% of its total territory to the United States. 55%! This enormous landmass, which we call the Mexican Cession, would eventually become the states of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and chunks of New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. Literally half a nation effectively transferred in a single treaty.
And what was the compensation for giving up half a country? $15 million. Honestly, an absolute pittance. And to add serious historical insult to injury, massive world-changing gold reserves were discovered in California almost the exact second the ink on the treaty was dry. I mean, you can't make that up.
So, the really crucial point here is that this victory wasn't exactly a clean win for the United States. Actually, it was a poisoned prize. Adding all this new land instantly reignited the most dangerous question in American politics at the time. Would these new territories be slave or free? It was this exact debate over the Mexican Cession that propelled the U.S. directly down the path to the Civil War. Plus, the war in Mexico served as the ultimate training ground for the officers who would very soon be fighting each other. Future generals like Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, and Stonewall Jackson, they all basically learned how to command troops during this specific invasion.
Just consider this profound reflection from Ulysses S. Grant himself, a man who literally learned the art of war down in Mexico. He later called it one of the most unjust wars ever waged. That really shows you the deeply troubling internal legacy and, honestly, the heavy moral toll this expansion took on the American consciousness.
Which brings us to our final section. Part 6, the 2026 perspective, a strategic partnership.
Because history doesn't just stay neatly in the past, right? Today, this war remains a very deep, foundational national scar for Mexico. It is fiercely remembered as the moment the Colossus of the North took advantage of a struggling, newly independent neighbor. But look at where we are now. The lines drawn in the sand way back in 1848 remain the most crossed and debated borders literally anywhere in the world. As the U.S. and Mexico navigate vital modern issues, trade, migration, the ghosts of the Alamo and the Mexican Cession are still sitting right there in every negotiation. But despite the conflict, the ceded regions have become this incredibly vibrant cultural and economic bridge. It just proves that while military force might move lines on a map, over time, people and cultures inevitably merge.
The Mexican-American War didn't just move a border, it fundamentally shifted the gravity of the entire Western Hemisphere. It started with a tiny mission in San Antonio and ended with a continental empire. So, as we look at the map today, I want to leave you with this thought to reflect on. Is the Southwest truly American, or is it a vibrant, shared space where the living history of 1836 and 1848 is still being written every single day? Thanks for learning with me on today's Explainer, and hey, keep questioning the lines on the map.